Hello. We'll wait for another 5 minutes for participants to join in. Also, this is being live streamed, so some of the other participants will be watching it on YouTube.
दीदी को बता दिया क्या कहते हैं?
कृति कॉल करते हैं बहुत।
Hello, good evening, and thank you everyone for joining us on a Saturday evening. We'll start the session now. So I hope my screen is visible. Let me know if it's not, and I also hope I'm audible. So 180 Degrees Consulting presents the Consulting Bootcamp. So previously we had the session with Top 1% Club, where they spoke about GMAT as well as GRE preparation. And we'll move on to the next phase of the Consulting Bootcamp. So firstly, the agenda for this part of the meeting is we will introduce 180 Degrees Consulting, and then we will talk about what consulting is, and then we'll have a quick introduction to our panelists, and we'll have a quick panel discussion, followed by breakout sessions where cases will be solved. And after this, we'll have a Q&A session where you can ask your questions to the panelists. So an introduction to 180 Degrees Consulting. So 180 DC is the world's largest university-based consultancy organization. And essentially, our mission is to strengthen socially conscious organizations. So what we've observed is most of these socially conscious organizations, whether it be NGOs, even the government organizations, etc., they're not able to avail the services of premium consultancy organizations. And we provide consultancy services at a nominal fee. So our motivation is to fill that crucial market gap between the students from the best universities as well as these socially conscious organizations. So some of our clients in the past globally have been UNHCR, Wikimedia, etc. And at 180 DC IIT Madras, we've worked with Kaila Satyarthi Children's Foundation, Habitat for Humanity, the government of Tamil Nadu, etc. So these are our panelists. We have Achintya Goyal from IIT Bombay, who will be joining McKinsey. We have Akash Srivastava from IIT KGP, who will be joining Bain and Company. We have Aryan Saxena from KGP, who will be joining BCG. Kush Ganatra from Madras, who will be joining McKinsey. Nab Agarwal from Bombay, who will be joining Bain. Nesara SR from KGP, who will be joining McKinsey, and Riya Acharya from Delhi, who will be joining McKinsey, as well as Vasundhara Rai from Kanpur, who will be joining Bain, and Yashaswi from Delhi, who will be joining BCG. So this is to help you know your co-panelists better, as well as to introduce our panelists to the participants. Now, quickly jumping into what consulting is. So we often know that consulting is referred to as giving advice, But consulting is more than just giving advice. It's defined as the practice of providing a third party with expertise on any particular matter in exchange for a fee. And it could involve many different things. For example, it involves understanding the client's problem and solving it. And this involves, making a diagnosis, making recommendations based on that diagnosis, assisting with the implementation of those recommended solutions, etc. And anyway, we'll be deep diving into the roles and responsibilities of a consultant, etc. But this is just to give you an idea that consulting is not just about giving businesses advice. Also, before we go into the roles and responsibilities, there are different types of consulting. There is technology consulting, financial advisory consulting, etc., etc. But we'll be focusing on management to strategy consulting. So what do management consultants do? So as we said earlier, consulting is loosely applied to providing business advice on various topics. But in particular, management consultants have to define the problems or opportunities their businesses face. They have to collect and analyze data to better understand their problem or opportunity. And then they have to identify a recommended course of action and plan the implementation of that solution. So as is shown in this figure, the first thing that you have to do is define the problem. You have to collect facts, which can provide some data on the problem. You have to identify the best practices, outline an implementation plan, and then work with the management so that you can come up with a solution. Finally, you have to recommend a solution and ensure that your solutions are implementable sustainably. So this is the entire timeline of any project that a management consultant takes up. This is a basic timeline. Of course, it varies from project to project. Now, the next question is why management consulting? So we're talking about the different career choices that we have. And one of the most common career choices that people go for is management consulting. And one of the reasons why management consulting is a lucrative career choice is the people and the culture. So if you ask most people why they enjoy working in management consulting, one of the first few things that they will tell you is that, they like the people or the culture at their firm. The second biggest perk is a tight-knit working environment. And this might look like a downside at first, glance, but it's really not, because given the small team and intense working environment, you often end up becoming very close friends with your fellow consultants outside of work too. And this is further encouraged by firms by, providing these company-wide events like summer offsites, holiday parties, etc. The third is a powerful alumni network, and this is very well known, right? It's no surprise that top management consulting firms have some of the most largest and accomplished alumni networks. You have people like Sheryl Sandberg, who's ex-McKinsey, John Legend, who's ex-BCG, and Mitt Romney, who's ex-Bain, and all of these guys started in management consulting. You also have high impact work. This basically means that the questions that you're faced with will be the front and center for your clients. The problems that you identify, the opportunities that you identify for your clients are super important to them. So the answers that you give them, the solutions that you recommend will dramatically change the future of these companies. So you are, involved in very high impact work. The last point here is lucrative exit opportunities. So things like masters, MBA, etc., are all some of the many exit opportunities that you have. So these are some of the reasons that people normally join management consulting as a career. But the question is, what do you need to become a management consultant, right? So now that you know that you might possibly want to join a career in management consulting, are you suited for it is the next question. So let's consider two questions basically. Do you enjoy working periods of long hours followed by a few days of just sitting on the bench? And sitting on the bench is basically taking it easier. Also, do you like being your own project manager and being held accountable for it? So these are two questions. And if you answer yes to both of these questions, we would say that you're more inclined for management consulting. But other than that, you also need the skills that it takes to succeed at a career as a management consultant. And what you need is creative thinking. You need to think conceptually as well as practically. You need problem-solving skills, which are emphasized a lot in case interviews, etc. You need to communicate clearly as well as empathetically. You will also be collaborating with all job levels. This is from your shop floor employees all the way up to the CEOs of companies. You'll be collaborating with everyone and anyone. And also organization and time management skills are super important, as well as curiosity and credibility. So we'll be elaborating on how they identify these skills as a part of, their case interviews, etc., as a part of the recruitment process later. But generally, these are the kind of skills that they're largely looking for. So the next question is, how do management consultant firms hire, right? Because now that you know that you want a career in management consulting and you have what it takes to be a management consultant, how do they actually hire? So people are the most important asset for any management consulting firm, and they want the best people. So the two major steps are resume shortlisting as well as case interviews. Resume shortlisting is basically screening of candidates based on, all of the things that you've put up on your resume. They might have certain, minimum qualifications, etc. We'll look at, what they're looking for in a resume later. We'll be asking our panelists those questions. And the second part is the interview. The interview is normally a personal interview, and after that, they do their evaluation and then they offer a job letter if you're selected. So the question is, what is the case interview? Because resume shortlisting is quite common. It is a part of the process for even other companies. But if you're not familiar with consulting companies, case interview can seem like a very new thing, and it might seem a bit intimidating. But it's really not, because it's not an interview. At its very essence or core, it's a brainstorming session. And you will do much better if you just treat it like that. So it's basically designed to stimulate life on the job as a management consultant. It replicates all of the stages of a 3 to 6 month engagement in approximately 30 or 40 minutes, which is your interview duration. And the goal here isn't to find a solution or problem to the case. The goal is to have a good discussion and to demonstrate how you think about complex problems. I'd also recommend everyone to mute so that there's no disturbance. Okay, just continuing. So basically, you have to treat it like a brainstorming session, and you need to have a good discussion with your interviewer, right? So then the next question that a lot of you might have, is that if there is no right or wrong answer, and if it's just a brainstorming session, then what are they actually looking for? There are certain skills that are needed in a case interview, and there are certain skills that they're looking for in a case interview. The first is problem solving or problem structuring, as it's referred over here. Problem structuring refers to taking a very large, ambiguous problem and then breaking it up into smaller pieces. And these smaller pieces are easier to understand, analyze, address, digest, etc. The next is logical reasoning. And logical reasoning is really important because you need to be able to explain why you do everything that you do in a case. So any step that you take, anything that you do in a case, you need to be able to support it with some logic. The next step is analytical reasoning. And this basically refers to addressing problems in a systematic and preferably numerical way. And in continuation with that, largely you're expected to derive conclusions from data. So you're supposed to ask the interviewer for data, and then you're supposed to derive conclusions or take the next step in general based on that data. And finally, they look for your ability to synthesize or communicate your conclusions. Synthesis is basically an industry jargon for summarizing the whole case, and this allows you to give them a conclusion as well as a recommended course of action. So these are the things that they normally look for in a case interview. And now we'll move on to the panel discussion aspect of the case interview. So I already introduced our panelists here today. I hope all of you can hear me, and it would be great if you could switch on your videos also. So we already have some pre-prepared questions, and we'll be asking our panelists that first. Following that, we will give you some time to ask your questions as a part of a Q&A session, but we'll start with these first. So the first question is, how did you get into consulting? And I would like to ask Nab that if maybe you could elaborate on how exactly you got into consulting.
So my journey into consulting was, if I put it very bluntly, was kind of a selection by elimination. So during my first year and second year, I tried to explore out all the options available to me. And core got ruled out for me very early. So that was not an option. Then other options were majorly finance, or you could say coding profiles, and the other profiles like consulting. And then I explored out coding, and it was something which I was not getting that vibe ki I want to do it all the time. It was something which I can do, but I was not that inclined towards doing it. And then I got introduced towards consulting from my seniors, and that seems to be a very good option, especially at the start of my career, wherein you could get to explore various different things. Let's say if a case changes every 4 months or every 3-4 months, you get to explore a different role or a different profile every 3-4 months. So that was the calling for me, with that I could explore out various different things in the starting and then eventually make a decision for my career later on. And yeah, the other perks and travel and everything was also something which attracted. But yeah, the major driving force towards consulting was the career opportunities or the exploratory part which consulting offers.
Okay, and can we also ask someone else, for example, Kush, did you also have a similar experience? Was it by elimination, or did you know from the beginning that you wanted to go into consulting?
For me, it was a bit of elimination, but at the same time,
Okay.
I participated in a lot of case study competitions throughout my first and second year, and I just enjoyed doing that. And I talked with a few consultants, and I just knew that this is where I felt connected and wanted to go.
So which year did you realize that you wanted to get into consulting? Was it third year or was it earlier or later?
It was in my third year when I was studying for my interns.
Okay, that's interesting. And we'll ask one last person. Vasundhara, can you give us your opinion on how you got into consulting?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'm from IIT Kanpur, and at IIT Kanpur, usually MBB until my time didn't come for internships. So I came to know I was actually a UPSC aspirant, and I came to know about consulting very late, like during our last year during resume submission time, when people were like, "Hey, you have got a nice resume. Why you're not sitting for placements and all?" And I got to know about it then. And yeah, there were a lot of things which I found very interesting about consulting. Obviously, the kind of opportunities you can explore, the kind of like-minded people you have. Uh, and also, one thing was I wanted to explore a little more further before I step into this decision. Okay, I want to go in this particular direction. So I see consulting as an extended college. So because at college you get to meet a lot of people, you get to explore a lot of things. I think consulting is similar kind of thing. You get to explore a lot of things, you meet a lot of people. So I think let's dive into consulting for some time and let's see how it works out.
Okay, so since you mentioned, having a good resume, can you also just continue? We'll just move on to the next question, which is a few tips with respect to, making a good resume or making a killer resume. Can you also mention a couple of tips?
Okay, sure. So basically, my insecurity was also related to resume because in after I got an internship in my second year, I was like, now I'm completely going to prepare for UPSC. So almost in my third year, I had a few major involvements, but not like a frenzy amount of involvements that I had in my first and second year. And that was a bit insecurity of mine. But at the same time, I realized that the kind of work that I had done in the first and second year and the bit bigger involvements that I had in third year were good enough. So I would suggest all of the people in the audience to make sure that try your hands at everything and try to be the best at whatever you're doing. Instead of I talk to a lot of juniors at my college and people are like, what kind of perks do we need on our resume? What should be the perks we should look out for? And I always suggest them that because I saw it in my case that just try your hands at everything, give your best. And I never worked like these days. Students are a lot into from the very beginning. They are into which position of responsibility should I take so that my resume is shining, which prof should I work with. Let's not do that. Let's just see where we are interested, head into there, just do great.
Maybe we can ask Yashasvi also about a few tips so as to have a good resume and what companies are looking for on your resume.
Sure. So I think one of the most important things is the way you put your work on the resume, right? Because I've seen people who've done lots of great things in college, but they don't put it as well on their resume, and then that affects. And then you could also have like few points, but then, the way you present it really becomes very important. So yes, I mean, getting your CV reviewed, starting early, getting it reviewed by multiple seniors, right? And especially seniors who are already placed in consulting, that helps a lot. Also, some of the things that I think consulting firms look for on the resume are leadership skills, team working skills, and what Vasundhara mentioned as well, right? They see if or not you are the best at whatever you do. That's really important. There's this, popular concept of looking for peaks in the resume in different sections. So there's like, primarily 3-4 sections. If you have like, 2 to 3 peaks, that sort of indicates that it's a holistic overall, good profile. I think largely that's what firms look for.
Okay, and also Nesara, maybe you could elaborate a little bit more if you also agree with them or if you think that there's something different that they look for on a resume.
Hey, yeah, sure. So I think everyone has like made some really excellent points. It's not about some particular, let's say, a laundry list of things you have to do to get into consulting. It's about they're pretty much background agnostic, right? Because that's pretty much been established over the years from the seniors that have gotten into consulting. Everything that I've seen across college, it's not about what background you're from, but how well have you done the particular things that you claim to have done in your CV, right? That's pretty much established. But when we look at when it actually comes to presenting these points on your CV, I'll talk about a few points there. I think I'm someone who thinks that you need to be like able to give 100% to the parts of the process that's in your control. And I think CV is definitely in that category, because up until D-Day, CV plus preparation plus the sort of networking you do, the sort of informed choice you're able to make is something that's in your control. And again, like the rest of the part of the process is like uncertain. So CV is something that you should take seriously as much as you would with preparation. And like down to the last bit of detail on the CV is something you should pay attention to, because it's not about who the hell is going to like look at a particular full stop or like a comma, but how is it gonna, what sort of impression is it gonna create if they happen to notice that blunder in your CV, and what does that tell about your attention to detail, etc. So that's definitely something everyone should keep in mind. Apart from that, I think I don't know what the pool of attendees here are, but like a good practice I think is to generally sort of keep a documentation of the things you're doing in college. I think that greatly helps. Because by the time you reach final year and you're actually sitting down to make your CV, you might realize that you don't actually remember a lot of things you've done, probably like in your first or second year, which still goes into your CV, but you might not be able to prep well enough for it because it's been a few years, right? So I think preparing a good document, and this is something you can keep as a good practice right from your first or second year, but also when you sit down in your final year, I think listing down all your experiences, just like going over it, will help you sort of identify what you want to highlight and what you do not want to. That creates a bit of a self-awareness also, I believe. So that's another thing I would like to highlight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think so when exactly does the result for the resume shortlisting process come out? And when do you often start the next stage of like case preps? Do you do it simultaneously, or do you, wait for the resume shortlisting results to come out? And I think I'll ask that question to Ria, if she's here. Okay, we'll move on to Aryan. Maybe Aryan, you can answer that question.
So yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so when does the resume shortlisting result, etc., normally come up?
Right.
And do you start the case interview preparation simultaneously, or do you wait for these results to come up?
Right. So I can say this for my institute itself, because I think we are pretty aware of what the timeline is. So we did start preparing in advance because we wanted to be better prepared once when the deadline did came. But I think even if you start when the shortlists have come out, that is also fine. I think they give you enough time. There are enough buddy interactions to actually get you prepared enough for the interview day. But it's obviously very good if you start earlier and if you make your case group earlier, because on the last day of maybe the deadline or on the last day of the shortlisting comes out, a lot of people might have already formed case groups and a lot of work might have been done by the other candidates. So if you want to stay ahead of the curve, just start preparing in advance and keep track of the timeline and deadlines. So that would help.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to what the case interview process, preparation process itself is like. And I'd like to ask Achintya, maybe you could start off on what exactly your case interview preparation process involved.
Sure. So my process was actually spread over 2 years. I prepped for internships and interviews for placements. But the key takeaways I had at the end of it was, one, be consistent. At the same time, do not worry too much about what your peers are doing. So if you're doing a case a day and your peers are doing 3 cases a day, you do not need to worry. Go at your own pace. Be comfortable with what you do. And at the end of every case, you should come away with some feedback. If you felt on a particular day that you did the case very well, then you probably did not put too much effort into it. So the key is that whatever plan you come up with, whatever timeline you come up with, whether you start after resume shortlisting comes out or you start before in summer vacation, that's completely up to you. Just be consistent to your own plan and do not deviate too much, because then that will create problems for you and no one else. Other than that, I completely agree with what was said regarding that you can start anytime you want. If you start even after resume shortlisting comes out, that's perfectly fine. Though I would recommend starting early, because case prep is something that is not only beneficial for consulting, but almost every other profile as well, because it gets you in a mode of structured thinking, critical thinking, which I think is important to crack any interview, regardless of what stream you're getting into.
Okay. Thank you for that. We'll also take Ria's opinion on this. What was your case interview preparation like? What all did you do? Did you have buddies, etc.? Did you focus only on them, or did you have a case group of your own, etc.? So what all was involved, your preparation process?
I started preparing for the consulting profile very late, because I was preparing for other profiles as well. Because I wasn't very sure of my CV, but when once the shortlists were out, I was very sure about it, and then I started I formed my case group and started preparing for consulting. So I can I can discuss a few key aspects to keep in mind to form a case group. So I think when you are on a journey to master case interviews, a skill that requires dedication and practice, you are learning a new skill. So the formation of a case group should typically happen early in your timeline. So it's crucial to choose compatible group members with whom you can learn effectively. You want individuals who can support and uplift each other throughout the entire process. So I think compatibility is the key here. And also forming a case group isn't just about the compatibility, but also about feedback. So as you navigate, you'll experience failures and setbacks. So that's very normal. So constructive feedback from your group members becomes an invaluable tool for growth, and together you learn, adapt, and bounce back stronger. So as you progress in your preparation, it's essential to diversify your case practice. So while your case group forms the foundation, you'll also want to engage with other members of your cohort who have secured shortlists in other consulting firms. So this broadens your exposure to different styles and perspectives. And furthermore, your case group acts as a safe space. So the preparation can be intense and demanding, and there will be moments when you need a supportive community, and your case group becomes your pillar of strength in that time. So that is why your case group plays a very important role in your case journey, and it helped me as well during my case interview preparation.
That's very nice. But there's often a thing that people say that, either everyone in the case group succeeds or, mostly no one really does. So is that true, or is that just a myth? And I'd like to address that question to Nab. Maybe we can go back to you again.
Yeah, so I think so. It would more or less be a myth only, but again, that depends on the case group and how much time each and every person of the case group devotes into it. But yeah, it's generally a very collaborative process. So, and it's generally a very free flow of information. So, if you know something or if you did case with someone, let's say like one of the practice which I did during my internship preparation was I was not particularly stuck to one case group. I was preparing with different individuals on a one-on-one basis rather than having a 4 to 5 member case group and sitting and watching on the others doing the cases, because I personally thought that each and every case which you watch someone else doing is a case you waste for yourself, because the learning from watching other person doing a case is very less, and anyway you can do that when you are taking a case of someone else. So that is why I generally used to have one-on-one case sessions. So for me it's a myth only, because it at the end it boils down how much effort one has put in into the case interview preparation process.
Okay, and can we also get Kush, your opinion on the same question?
Yeah, sure. So I personally didn't have a case group. I usually did a lot of cases with a few selected individuals. But what I feel on this is it's a myth. In general, in a case group, everyone grows eventually throughout the placement semester, and everyone has their own style of doing cases. So it doesn't hamper or your chances if you're helping a friend. In general, all the three members of the case group are growing simultaneously. And I think having a case group is advantageous because it helps you give an emotional support as well throughout the stressful season. And I think it's a myth.
Okay. So thank you for that. We'll move on to our last question, which is what are some of the myths about consulting that you have come across? This need not be only about the preparation process. It could also be about consulting as a career. And we'll start with Yashasvi.
Sure. So on myths, I am not sure what myths the audience, might have. So maybe if the participants could put it in chat, what are the myths that you think, what are some things that you think are true about consulting? And then maybe all of us can give whatever our opinion is, if or not that is true.
Anybody else among the panelists who have, generally encountered myths that people have and they'd like to dispel those myths here?
I think I can take one. Most commonly, I talk to a lot of seniors because I had this big question, which even at my college, a lot of people, juniors, since I got into placements, a lot of juniors had this doubt. How did you decide between UPSC and consulting? And that involved a lot of conversation with seniors. And one thing that I came across was people kind of think very high and kind of fantasize about this lavish life or as a consultant, like you're flying in and out, you're staying at an hotel. And I talked to those people and they said, you know what, you'll grow out of it, dude. Like you, you will, at some point of time, you will prefer peace at home rather than, taking a flight back. And then even at that hotel, you're not going to stay there. You're going to work all the time at the office. You'll come back to hotel just to sleep. So that was, I think, kind of a myth. And one other thing that they told me was, it's people say that after consulting, life is set. Surely, like it gives you a great launch pad. But it's kind of similar to when people say IIT ke baad life is set. Life is set only for people who are actually proactively putting themselves out in the world. And when we talk about like-minded people, when we talk about a plethora of opportunities, they come to people who actually go for it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Anybody else, any other myths that you guys have encountered or anything you'd like to add to Vasundra's points? Okay, if there's nothing else, there's another question that's come up. So what about off-campus opportunities for consulting interns as well as placements? I know that most of you guys have gotten your offers from, on-campus placements, etc. But do you know anything about off-campus and how easy it is to get or not get? So I'd like to field that question to Nisara, if you have any idea.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. So about off campus, can't really say a lot from my experience because I went through the entire process on campus. But what I've seen is it's quite a stringent criteria that they come with to campuses, especially the MBB. So scoring an off-campus interview with them could be difficult. That is not something I would like bank on 100% without any backup. However, I think with other firms, I'm really not sure. I cannot comment on that. No, I haven't been there. So
That's
yeah.
fair. Anybody else who knows anything about off-campus opportunities? If not, we'll move on to the next question. So there's another question that's asking what are case groups? If one of you could elaborate on what case groups are, maybe we can go to Aryan.
Yeah, sure. So case groups are basically you just sit down with a bunch of your people who who are just like planning to go and sit for the same companies. You trade cases with them. So basically, you have sessions wherein there's one person who is taking the case, there's one person who is solving the case, and there's one observer. So I typically like to, in my case group at least, we had three people, right? One was taking the case, the second person was actually answering the case, and the third person was an observer making notes and everything. So these groups sort of help you a lot in terms of preparing for case interviews. Firstly, because it's important to have these real life simulations of what you're actually going to face on the interview day, right? So you cannot just have your first case interview, first live case interview on the interview day itself, right? There are a lot of elements that you might miss. So for that, you need to practice regularly, build up a bit of confidence in terms of solving a case in the limited number of minutes that you have during the interview. So the case group actually helps you a lot with that. Second thing that case group helps you with is like it can help you track your progress also. So you get a lot of feedback from whoever is taking your case, right? So that gives you a lot of perspective in terms of where you can improve, in terms of what you're missing actually, and if you've covered on mistakes that you did make in the past, and are you repeating it or not. Also, sometimes getting even taking cases is important because it gives you a sort of fresher perspective on solving a particular case. For example, if you solved a case in one particular way and you gave it to your friend in the case group and he solved it some other way, so that gives you a different point of view towards how to solve that case or how to structure that case, and that inherently helps you developing a better case sense and better structuring abilities. So I think that explains.
Thank you for explaining that. We'll have one last question before we go to the breakout sessions. There's a question about work-life balance in consulting firms. So I think Nav can take the work-life balance question first, and then we'll hear from the others too.
Yeah, so regarding the work-life balance, first thing I read in the question that it is mentioned that consultants usually work overtime till late at night. So I'll share from my experience of my internship at Bain. So just to mention on the weekends, so during the first week of my internship, I got scolded by my case team seniors because I casually mentioned that I'll send a file over the weekend. So they were like, don't you dare touch your laptop for work-related purposes on weekends. So that's definitely not true, at least for Bain, that there's absolutely no work done on weekends. And now regarding the work-life policy, yeah, you can say it's a bit on the hectic side if you compare with other profiles. It's not a 9-to-5 job for sure because you are delivering high-impact work. So you ought to put in extra time and extra efforts into it. But again, late at night depends what you define. But in typical consulting scenarios, people generally close by 10 or 11-ish, and they start at 10 or 11 in the morning. So yeah, 12-hour workday is what you can look forward to.
Okay. Maybe we can also ask Ria about your opinion on work-life balance in MEB firms or in consulting in general. Or actually, let's skip that. How about Achintya? Same question.
Work-life balance? I'm sorry, I lost connection between. Which question do you want me to answer? Work-life balance?
The work-life balance question.
Okay. So I won't go into my own experience, but my buddy from McKinsey, the time that he was my buddy, he used to get free at 6 p.m. used to go to office at 9 a.m. and get free at 6 p.m. And then he completely had weekends off. So I think the work-life balance is very dependent on your case. As Nab said, if you're on a hectic case, then it's going to be hectic. 12 hours is something that's expected. But at the same time, that's not also true all across the board. If it's a chill case, if it's a smaller company, or if it's, let's say, a government company that generally closes their office at 5 p.m., they're going to get free sooner. Of course, it also depends on you, how fast you get your work done. So if you have your work overflowing into the weekend, then that's completely up to you. But mostly, these firms practice a policy of not having to come into the office on the weekends to and give you an off so that you have time to recover from the hectic week, so to say.
Okay. Okay, so that's great. Sounds like you have a good work-life balance. So I think we'll stop the audience questions here and we'll come back to them later. For now, we'll move on to solving a case. So basically, we'll be having you guys in breakout sessions, and one of the panelists will be in your breakout room, and they will take you through solving a particular sample case that we've added here. And we'll move on to that part. You'll soon find yourself, you'll find a request asking you to join a particular breakout room. Please click yes.
ಪಾನಿಪುರಿ भारत सरकार के खेल एवं I don't think it's
Manvit, are you on a laptop or a Zoom client? Manvit,
Yep.
are you on a Zoom
I
client?
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
maybe can you
the
make me a
meeting is
co-host or
the meeting. I'll just make it a host as well.
yeah.
The meeting is being streamed on YouTube right now. Yeah, I made you the co-host.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'll just share my screen again and we'll get going. Yeah, is it visible? Can anybody confirm?
Yep, it is.
Yeah, so we were basically on the preliminary questions front. So after reading the case statement, what we try to get hold from the preliminary questions is not any data figures or anything like that. We from the preliminary questions, we try to understand the problem better, which means we ask what's the timeline that the client is looking forward to. So we got to know that it was 4 months before, and then we asked up like, is it happening to only this pharmacy or is it a wider problem? How many pharmacies are there on the hospital, so that we could get a bigger picture of that. And we got to know that there are two pharmacies on two different floors and both are facing the issue. So we got to know that this issue is not particular to a specific pharmacy, it is happening to both the pharmacies. So the next genuine question which happens is it this hospital or all? So when we asked that question, we got to know that almost all the pharmacies in the city are facing an issue. So this is an industry-wide issue we are looking to. So we should structure our thoughts accordingly. And then the other two questions were basically all normal kind of drugs or all general drugs are sold at the pharmacy. So it's not any rare kind of drug that has been impacted or anything like that that has affected the profit margins. We generally don't go into like getting data that how much decline, how many stores, how many number of stores reduced or anything like that. Now, next up, what we do is we kind of go to a framework. So there are various different frameworks, which you'll get a rough idea when you will watch out all the videos which I suggested by Victor Cheng from YouTube. You can watch all those videos and you can get an idea about what all different kind of frameworks are there. But as like one of you mentioned at the start, like since the profits are going down, so profits can generally be broken down into revenue minus cost. That's your profit. Now, so anybody want to be on an interactive level while doing the case, or should I go ahead as a monologue? I think monologue it is. So yeah, profits equal to revenue minus cost. So how could the profit margins reduce? So one way would be the revenues have gone down, costs have remained the same, right? In that way, the profits will go down. The other way would be revenue remain the same, costs have gone up, the profits will decline. Or the third way, which is worst of both, revenues have gone down, costs have gone up. All these three cases will mean that your profit margins will decline and the profits will reduce. So first thought, okay, let's try asking it. So we got to know that profit equal to revenue minus cost. And now just a thumb rule, whenever you are doing a case interview, it's good to have a hypothesis driven approach, but don't assume anything on your own. Ask up to the case interviewer. Ideally, it's so I'll also speak up in the way which you should ask a case interviewer, but generally, whenever you're asking a certain question, if you have some thoughts in your mind, speak them up. And then let's say whenever you're asking a question, it should look like you have a certain hypothesis which is going down in your mind, and you're asking the hypothesis-based questions to the interviewer. That will generally give you some brownie points in the case interview process. So let's say here you come into profit. So how you could go it? Okay, so as per the preliminary questions, we got to know that this is a firm-wide issue which is happening across the this is an industry-wide issue which is happening across the pharmaceutical industry, and nearly all the pharmaceutical industries, pharmaceutical stores in the city are facing this issue. So I would like to go ahead and further analyze this. So for that, we could divide profits equals to revenue minus cost. Now there could be various options possible for profits to decline, whether this be a decrease in revenue or an increase in cost, or both. So do we have any information as to what actually is transpiring over here? So when you ask this question, the case interviewer will give you some answer, or he or she might just tell you, okay, analyze both. But in general cases, since the case interview is a time constrained evaluation, they'll generally try to narrow down on your path. So basically, if I say how it's a case interview is generally, basically you have various branches. You could see that there are branches happening. So once you decide one particular branch and go down and analyze it to the bottom, see whether the issue lies over there. If it lies over there, the case is closed. If not, you rise back to the upper branch and then again dive deep into the next branch and repeat this process till you find the core of the issue. Okay, so let's say if we have asked over here, okay, so profits equal to revenue minus cost. So do we have any information as to what actually is transpiring over here, where the revenues have gone down or the cost have gone up? So on that, maybe the case interview will tell you that, okay, so the revenues have gone down and the costs have gone up. So it's a case of a worst of both. Now you are at a fix what to analyze. So maybe you could ask them upfront, which I used to do. Okay, so do we have any scale, what has been the decline in revenue and what has been the increase in the cost? Because there's a rule of 80-20, yeah. There's an 80-20 rule. You need to focus on the bigger picture first. Like say if the decline in revenue is by 40% and the increase in cost is by 10%. So it makes a general sense for you to first analyze revenue, because that's the major driver. Because if that's the 40% contributor and you are analyzing the 10% contributor, then you might not end up finding the root cause of the problem. So let's say if we got over here that the revenue decline has been by 40% and the cost have gone up by 5%. So then just state it up ahead. Okay, since revenue seems to be a major driver for the decline in profits, I would like to analyze it further. And if we are not able to find out a particular issue, then we'll circle up to the cost section at a later point in the case. Now, revenue, we got to know that we are first analyzing revenue. Before going ahead, I would like to just break it up for you. So like revenue, what revenue would be? Revenue is all the money that a store earns. Store or a chain earns. So that means, let's say if it's a certain chain or a pharmaceutical chain, since we knew that there were two stores and both of them are facing an issue. So generally breaking down it, revenue is, what I used to follow is units into revenue per unit. Now what is a unit? That depends on the case context. So for here, a pharmaceutical, for a pharmacy is over there. So the unit would be number of pharmacies and there would be revenue per pharmacy. So when you multiply it, you get the revenue, right? And while analyzing this thing, you don't have any of the levers from cost side. So this is called being MECE, mutually exclusive, cumulatively exhaustive. So when you analyze revenue side, you have analyzed revenue side to the core, and now if if you haven't found the issue, either you have missed something, or if you have analyzed everything, then the issue doesn't lie over here. You can be confident about it. So when you have done this revenue division as number of pharmacies into average revenue for pharmacy, can anybody of you think of any other way a revenue we could have missed a revenue over here? Any revenue calculation could we have missed? Nothing, right? That's why we are messy in this division. And like if it's say for cost, you could do variable cost plus fixed cost. And fixed cost, there are various things which are generally covered in fixed cost and variable cost. I think if I go on covering them, it would extend to a lot that you could get to know from the Victor Cheng videos, what all you should analyze in fixed cost and variable cost. Now for the case context, we got to know that the cost is more or less not that big a factor. So we are analyzing revenue. Now we ask, okay, so what has changed? Has the number of shops gone down or the average revenue per shop has gone down, or both? Now, when you ask this question to the interviewer, now you know from the preliminary question that there were 2 shops in the hospital and both of them are seeing a decline, right? So prima facie, it seems that number of shops might not be an issue. So what way you could ask up to the interviewer is, okay, since we know that both of the shops in the hospital are facing an issue and decline in profits, which is boiling down to the decline in revenue herein. So I feel that number of shops might not be an issue and it might be average revenue per shop which has gone down. Am I thinking in the right line, or is there anything, or is it the other way around? So basically you have herein portrayed your hypothesis also to the interviewer and at the same point not concluded anything. You have asked for the interviewer to tell you whether you are thinking on the right line or not. And now when you ask this question, the interviewer will genuinely, yeah, you are thinking in the right condition. The average revenue per shop has gone down. Now we know that we have to now focus on average revenue per pharmacy. Now average revenue per pharmacy, again further breaking down into mathematical format, a natural thing which would mean is, let's say revenue per unit. I'll just put the general sense first, revenue per unit, right? Now revenue per unit would again be like number of transactions which happened and the number of units sold in per transaction into the average revenue per transaction, right? So wherein for this case, average revenue per pharmacy, we break it down into number of transactions into average revenue per transaction. So we are basically stepping down one step. And now again, we ask up the question. So do we have any information whether it is the number of transactions which have gone down or the average revenue per transaction which has gone down? So when you do that, you get to know that the number of transactions has gone down. Average revenue per transaction has more or less remained the same. Right? Now, how do you break up number of transactions further? So number of transactions, if you generally see, let's say, let us be in the shoes of someone who is going to a pharmacy, right? So number of transactions would mean how many people are there in the pharmacy and how many transactions they are doing, right? And now how many people are in the pharmacy will depend on how many people are in the hospital. So that briefly breaks up the number of transactions, which would be number of patients visiting the hospital multiplied by the percentage of patients visiting the pharmacy, multiplied by the percentage making transactions, and multiplied by the average transactions per patient. It might happen that 10 people go to a pharmacy, but only 5 of them make a transaction. So that's the percentage we have taken care of herein, right? So this breakdown again is a very messy breakdown. So you are at a very low risk of missing anything out. Now you again ask of the interview, okay, so do we have any information as to wherein the issue lies? Which of these 4 factors have changed? When you ask that, you will get to know that the number of patients visiting the pharmacy have gone down. Right? So now, how to proceed further? How to identify why this decline has happened? We now know that the number of patients have gone down. So the best way, this was till this point we were going out in a mathematical way. We were like breaking out into mathematical formulas and analyzing each of them. But generally what I have personally felt that after 3 steps of breaking down, I'll just show it up to you. Step 1, revenue cost, then step 2, number of shops, average revenue, and then step 3, number of transactions, and then step 4, percentage. So we have basically down 3 steps in the ladder. At this point of time, it's generally good to shift into a more of a qualitative way rather than a mathematical way. It's generally what I used to follow. might be as per the case requirements. It might require you to go mathematical for 1-2 steps more, but eventually it's generally good if you shift into a qualitative way at certain point of time. So now we know number of patients visiting a pharmacy. Okay, so let's now try to map out a customer journey. Let's say you are someone in a pharmacy. Let's say you are someone who needs medicines. So what all ways are there for you? Either you could go and go to the medicine and ask up. So go to the pharmacy and buy it up. So what all factors do you consider while you are buying from a pharmacy? It would be quality, right? The drug catalog which is there, the price, and the ease, right? So now when, again, just an advice over here, when you are going for a qualitative way, it might happen that you are not able to list down all the factors. It's generally good if you could just take, okay, so at every point of time, just take every major step when you change, just try to take a moment and think upon your steps up ahead. So like if when you got to know the problem statement, you have asked the preliminary question and you have told your preliminary approach or the primary approach which you are going to follow, it's generally good to say, okay, I'll just take a moment to chalk down my thoughts or write down my thoughts and make a structure for the case, and then you could just make a case structure. It's good to write on a sheet when you are solving a case, because the people who is interviewing you will see that sheet and they might evaluate you on that, because case interview is more of a methodology test rather than you getting to the final answer. Okay, so up here we are now into the customer journey part, and we have now listed down various factors which are there, like cost, product catalog, quality, ease, right? Then you can maybe tell the interviewer, okay, so now to further analyze why there is a decline in the number of patients visiting a pharmacy, I would like to analyze the customer journey, and we have listed down that these are the factors which generally determine how many patients are going to a pharmacy. So is there anything that I might have missed? So if you have missed anything, they'll tell you up there. So now when you percentage of patients have gone down, so do they want to buy the medicines, or that has not changed, but they don't want to buy from the pharmacy, right? So now when you analyze it further in, you could either go through this customer journey, or like I generally went directly to the customer journey. That depends on how much, because I had a certain thought in my mind, because that might be the case issue. Again, so like your general steps and progression of a case depends on what your hypothesis is going in the back of your mind. So let's say we are not directly up to the customer journey, what all determines the customer's decision to make a purchase. Before that, we try to trace down the entire customer journey. Basically, a patient first goes to a doctor, they get prescribed, then they buy medicines, and then they take medicines. So we now analyze this and find out that there is a change in the biomedicine front, right? And the factors which affect biomedicine are quality, price, catalog, and ease. When you ask, has there been a change in any of them, the interviewer will generally tell you. When you have drilled down to a certain extent, then the interviewer will tell you, because they are just testing whether you are able to drill down that thing. Then they'll tell you, okay, so there's a new startup which is there in the town, which is now delivering the medicines directly to the home of the patient at free of cost. So that is why the sales of the in-store pharmacies have gone down. So now you have identified the core issue, that the decline in the pharmacy's business or the profits is due to the fact that there is a new startup which delivers to patients' home for the same price, and that is why the ease of ordering medicines have gone up for the patients when they order through that startup. Right. So now we have found out the reason, and the case always now herein you need to remember the case statement. The case statement not only asks you to identify the issue, but also suggests some turnaround changes on how to improve the profit margins ahead. So any ideas what all you can do? Any ideas? So yeah, one thing would be, we got to know that people are now preferring ease, because they are more comfortable with medicines getting delivered at their home. So first, you can start your own delivery service. Second, again, it's might be, you can ask whether it makes a financial sense or not to start offering some discount so that we are now selling at a lower price than that of the startup. Because that you can also state from your personal experiences or not that generally the pharmacy business is a high profit margin business. So even if we cut down a bit on our profits, we are not facing any losses, and the numbers might help us break even, because if we decrease the profit per transaction but the number of transactions increase, our net profit might remain the same, and we'll be eventually able to capture back the share which we have lost to the startup. So you could, in this way, think of your solutions. Some could be short-term solutions, long-term solutions, and then you could think about some feasibility of it. So yeah, again, so herein we could see some recommendations like ideating a delivery service, have your own unique seller perspective or recipe, anything like that. So make them cheaper, reduce the wait time, or like have certain tie-ups which have certain common medicines already prescribed. If let's say there's a certain, let's say if there's a cold outbreak going on, then you have a certain set of medicines ready for cold. So anybody, they give you the prescription slip, you collect the cash, or like you have the payment method done and you just give them. So basically that reduces the wait time and improves the ease, because we knew that we defaulted compared to the startup on the ease part. So we now try to improve the ease and also make financial sense. So that is way you could give your recommendations. So now I'll just make you guys go through the entire case, how you would have solved it in the actual case interview. So yeah, this would kind of be in a speed. So just advising, be upfront and listen clearly. Okay, so we got to know that problem statement that there's a hospital in Chennai who has been facing a decline in profits from 2019, and the client wants us to identify the issues and suggest some turnaround changes. So to begin with it, I would like to first ask some preliminary questions to understand the problem statement better. So do we have any information as to when the client has started facing this issue? So so the client has been facing an issue by since 4 months. Okay, so is this particular to a shop, or what? How many shops are there in the hospital? Okay, so there are 2 pharmacies in the hospital and both of them are facing this issue. Those both are recorded on 2 different floors. Okay, so just I wanted to get a clarification over here. Is it related to these pharmacies only, or are there other pharmacies also facing this issue? So yeah, all the pharmacies in the city are facing this issue. Okay, so we got to know that this is more of an industry kind of issue. Okay, so I would like to take a moment here to chalk down my approach as to how to proceed further. Okay, so to proceed further, I would like to divide profits into revenue and cost, since we know profit equal to revenue minus cost. So do we have any information what has gone over here? Has the revenues gone down or the costs have gone up? Okay, so we know that the revenues have gone down significantly and there has been a slight increase in the cost. Okay, so my hypothesis would be the increase of cost could be accounted to an increase or to inflation. So I would like to focus more on the decline in revenue. Now revenue could be further broken down into number of pharmacies and the average revenue per pharmacy. Again, so once we got to know in the preliminary question that almost all the pharmacies are facing an issue. So my assumption is that there is a decline in the average revenue per pharmacy. Is it the case or not? Yes, indeed, it is the case. There has been a decline in the average revenue per pharmacy. Okay, I would like to further divide average revenue per pharmacy into number of transactions and average revenue per transaction. So do we have any information which of these has changed? Okay, so we know that number of transactions have gone down. Okay, so number of transactions can further be divided into number of patients visiting the hospital multiplied by the percentage of patients visiting a pharmacy multiplied by the percentage of patients making a transaction into the average transactions per patient. So do we know which of these 4 has gone down? Okay, so number of patients visiting a pharmacy has gone down. Okay, so number of patients visiting pharmacy has gone down. That means either 2 of the cases. First, people don't want to buy medicines, or the other would be people want to buy medicines but not from the pharmacy. So which of these has been the case? Okay, so people now don't want to buy the medicines from the pharmacy, they get it from somewhere else. Okay, so for this, I would like to deep dive into the customer journey. So basically, if a patient first get prescribed, then they buy the medicine and they take. So which of the following steps has taken the hit? Okay, so now buying the medicines has taken the hit. Okay, so if I step into the customer journey and analyze what all factors are generally there for a customer to decide how to buy a medicine or from where to buy a medicine, the factors I could think of that come into play are what is the product catalog, what are the quality of the medicine sold, what is the price, and what is the ease with which a customer or a patient can get the medicines. Is there anything that I might have missed over here? No, you have covered more or less everything. Okay, and we know that there has been a change in the ease of getting medicines because there's a new startup in the market which has started delivering the medicines to a patient's home at the same price. Okay, so we got to know that there has been a new startup in the market which is delivering medicine directly to the patients at the same price. That is why our in-store sales have taken a hit. Is there anything else you want me to analyze in this case, or should I move ahead to the recommendations part? No, you can move ahead to the recommendations part. So for the recommendations, I would like to maybe advise the client to have a delivery service, because that's the factor which made the difference. Or we could try to analyze whether it would make a financial sense for us to start giving out some profits, or start giving out some discounts on our medicine, so that we sell it a bit cheaper to other competitors and gain the market share. Or we could have some other unique selling point, like reduced wait time, or let's say some lucky draw kind of thing, which we do to attract the customers over here. Is there anything that you want me to focus on the case, or should I go ahead and synthesize the case? No, you can go ahead and synthesize the case. Now, just over here, synthesis of a case should be as short and crisp as possible. So how you synthesize is, you don't want to give out the entire journey of your case you did in the synthesis. How you do synthesis is directly, you could just say, okay, so we got to know that there has been a client who was facing a decline in profits in their in-store pharmacies, which upon analyzing we found out was due to the fact that there is a new startup in the town which is delivering medicines to the patients at the same price, which is why there has been an increase in ease with which the patient can get the medicine, and we have taken a hit. So to counter that, we could try starting our own delivery service, or we could start giving out some additional discounts so that we gain a competitive edge over our competitors and gain market share. Yeah, this is how you solve a case. Now, takeaways are generally use a MECE structure, logical and detailed structure, prioritize the 80-20 rule, and showcase good communication. So I explained all of them during the case only. Yeah, I guess that's all, and we'll wait for others.
Yes, we'll just wait for the other the breakout sessions also to wrap up, and once that is done, we'll go ahead with the audience quick question and answer session.
So the person interview part should have also covered in the breakout session or not? Because I haven't.
No.
Just in the meantime, like, would you like to answer that question which I was asking you initially, like the projects which should be put it up and see?
Anybody wants to take this question? So basically, he was asking about what all kind of projects you should put up on your CV. Like anybody who made a placement related resume would be in a better guess.
So basically, all those projects you feel like you've done some extraordinary work or something you would really want to showcase to the companies. So I had a few projects which had like some good outcomes that from the project, and they had some good results. So I wanted to show them to the companies. So it's upon you which projects you want to showcase, and it's okay to showcase some projects.
Like, I've just done my second year for the intern season coming up. I was planning of like what projects should actually do essentially in this summer right now. If there is something specific on your mind, because as such we don't have projects which are readily available or something. Like usually the software part, they usually have the projects like this, right? Usually you can go through that project. So would you suggest me?
Got it. So basically for that, it's not necessary that you have to do some consulting related project. It could be even doing some research under some professor, or maybe doing some intern and just scrapping the project altogether. All of that is completely fine. So in general, they don't look at previous domain knowledge or domain experience in consulting.
Okay, so we'll be starting the Q&A session now. So you guys can go to menti.com and enter this code. It would be easier than entering your questions on chat because it might be a bit tough to keep track of your questions on chat. So if you could go to the site and enter this code, you can type in your questions. And if you see similar questions asked by others and you also want answers to those questions, you can upvote those questions because we want to avoid duplicacy. So please go ahead and log on to the site and type in this code and type in your questions. We'll address them in a bit. I'll just put it on the chat also. So yeah, sorry. So we'll start with the questions. So one of the questions that has come up is how do we know to what level of depth we need to go in a particular case? Any one of you can take up that question. Let's not waste time calling out people.
Okay, so generally it's more of a case dependent answer, but generally what I have told, generally you should go around three, four steps in a mathematical way that you are breaking up the things in a mathematical fashion, X into Y, and you get the total. And then once you are down 3, 4 levels, you can maybe go into a qualitative way and maybe go into the customer journey or the value chain. And basically how much depth is what you get the core of the problem to, and then you can ask up if you have like getting the gist of the problem that okay, this is the problem, then it's better to ask up the interviewer, okay, so do you want me to further analyze this problem or move ahead? And then they'll be in a better place to answer you whether you want to analyze it further or not. So as to say, it's primarily not your decision to take how much depth you have to go, rather than it's the interviewer's call how in depth they want to analyze you. But yeah, you should have a rough idea. Okay, now I have analyzed to a certain depth, and this might be the core issue. And at that point of time, you can ask her whether you want me to analyze it further or not, and they'll answer you accordingly, and you can proceed with the case accordingly.
Okay, great. There's also another question. They've asked what are the basic information that's needed to that someone should know as a consultant, because you can have questions of coming from different fields, etc. So how much knowledge do they need to have about how a certain company supply chain might look like, etc. So anyone can take up that question too.
So in general, they don't expect you to have a lot of domain knowledge about all the different industries. Usually it's in IIMs, they require you to have this knowledge. If you go through the case groups, you'll have a basic idea about the major industries that they ask cases from. So a good books are SRCC Case Compendium or Day 1.0. I think they cover a lot of industries that are relevant for us.
Yeah, adding, can I add something to it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I think if you encounter a case in an unfamiliar industry, I think it is perfectly fine to ask for the guidance. I don't think don't hesitate to tell your interviewer, I'm not familiar with this industry, or could you provide me with some basic information. I think they're there to assess your problem solving skills and not your knowledge of the industry itself. So they'll be more than happy to give you a brief overview to help you get started with the case.
Okay, great.
Just another
point.
Go ahead. I think people will sort of get a good grasp of different industries by the end of their prep. That is something that happens. But just to be just an extra step would be to sort of Also look at your, in case you know who your interviewer is going to be, it's better to also look at what their general areas of practice has been, which is like a commonly available knowledge on the internet. So typically you're like assigned a partner or a project leader to take your interview, right? So typically in that stage of the career, they would have narrowed down to particular sectors. So in case you know the interviewer beforehand, name of the interviewer beforehand, then I think it's better to also sort of go through these industries and know the relevant information there as well.
Okay.
And in any case, if you have no idea what is the industry I've encountered with, preliminary questions is the place where you get your doubts clear and get you aligned with the case problem. You could even ask up the question, what's the revenue model for this industry looks like, as I'm not aware of familiar with this industry, and the interviewer will be more than happy to guide you up with that. The crux of the thing lies is don't go ahead with half a knowledge. Ask them up, they'll answer you, and even they'll appreciate that thing. They won't deduct any points or anything like that. That won't happen.
Okay. There's also another question regarding the importance given to CG. How much is a good CG? Do certain CGs get directly, sort of eliminated, etc.?
Maybe I can take that up. I don't think so. From my experience, while I was interning at BCG, right, the hiring process for the interns was going on, and some of my seniors were actually doing the shortlisting process back then. So it's not like they completely eliminate some CVs. Everyone who's applied, at least at BCG, this I know of, they don't put a cutoff that okay, below this we're not going to look at the resumes. They look at all the resumes. I think that CG criteria is not absolute. It would vary based on which campus you're from and what is the relative sort of standing of all your batchmates. So it can be 8 also, it can be 7.5 also, it can be 8.5 also. But they don't look at your CG as something as a yes or no. It's more of a holistic evaluation of the entire profile. If let's say your CGPA is on a slightly lower end, then you can always make up for it by focusing on other sections or highlighting other sections on your profile on your CV. So it's more of a holistic evaluation rather than just a CG cutoff.
Okay. Okay, great. There's another question which basically asks what should a person do if they're stuck or they just blank out in the middle of a case interview? And have any of you had such experiences?
So I'll take this up. So I did not have this experience right in the case interviews that I've had so far, but I did get stuck when I was starting to prepare and getting to learn how to do case interviews. I think the advice that I got from my seniors who I did the cases with was to actually stay calm. Firstly, do not panic, because I think a lot of things can go wrong further into the case if you panic at that situation. Secondly, try and get the help of the interviewer, because it is a lot about how you interact with him and how you interact more information to actually build the case on. So if you're just completely blank, maybe ask the interviewer if these are the possible ways we can approach it. The interviewer might be willing to help you out. If that is not the case, then you can maybe just build your case on the kind of information that is given to you so far. Even if those the options are cut out, just remember the basics that you've done. So for example, at least go and build the basic parts, and then maybe the interviewer would help you out somewhere down the line, right? So if you are if you don't know anything about how to solve a particular case, just try and build the basic structure, and then along the way try and extract more information in terms of how to build more and how to structure it better as you go along solving the case. So I think that is the.
If I can add something over here, let's say if it's not about whether or not you know how to solve the case or not, and if it's just because of the stress and the pressure that you just blank out, in that case also I think something that would help is just to let your interviewer know that you need a minute and that you're a little nervous. It's completely fine to say that. I mean, they've seen hundreds of interviewees, and they've been through the process themselves at some point. So if you just tell them the truth that I take a minute to just come down and then come back, that should also be perfectly fine in the worst case.
Like in order to prevent and avoid these kinds of situation, I would like to share advice I received from my seniors. So he asked me to solve cases with as many people as possible before my final interview. So it allowed me to gauge my competition and understand different perspectives, but also it also helped me to become comfortable in front of diverse kind of individuals. So it helped me to prepare to adapt and excel in my final interview scenario. So I took the opportunity to solve cases with a wide range of people, like just to avoid this kind of situation.
I think I'd like to add one more thing. It's very important to speak your thought process out. Like there might be some things you might be thinking of it, but you're feeling like now I'm stuck. So, but if you're speaking out loud what you're thinking, they'll at least know that okay, at least in this particular direction you are thinking. So speak whatever you are thinking about. And also it's also about stealing time while looking as if you're confident, right? So you can when you are feeling stuck, just go over kind of not don't do it again and again, but maybe you can go over whatever you have like very quickly, like just in a few moments back whatever you had concluded, and go over it slowly so that by that time you'll also be thinking what to do next, and they'll be like, okay, yes, I'm getting a better understanding of the problem. So
Okay, so we'll have one last question. So there are a couple of questions about what exactly constitutes a peak on the resume, as well as how many peaks are required. So if any of you could just briefly explain what is normally considered as a peak and how many, I mean, even though a couple of you mentioned that that's not exactly a criteria, but generally if you could just elaborate on what peaks are.
okay, I will take that question. So Nisha, you want to say something?
No. You can go ahead. I can add on to that later.
So, see, what are peaks? They are basically trying to see, as a consultant, you will be thrown in different situations. You have to come up with a solution in a very short interval of time. So you have to be your best at every situation that they throw you into. So that is what is actually peak. That trait of yours is to be shown in your resume, that you go out, you explore a lot of things, and then you excel there. So going out, it's not hard and fast rule which fields to get into. You could also be like, while I was sitting for placements, there were many of my friends who were from research background, and just for the placement, they were just sitting for consulting that, and their resumes actually got shortlisted. So they were not holding any major positions of responsibility or something, but they had a solid resume of filled with research stuff, right? So you have to show, and there should be like 2-3 things where you can say that yes, there are these 2-3 things that I've entered, these are the 2-3 fields that I've ventured into, and I've excelled greatly in that. So that is what I'll define as peaks. Nisra, if you want to add something.
So I was going to say that the definition of a peak also could be relative to your campus. That is, so basically, essentially, peaks is their way of bringing some certain extent of objectivity into the process of shortlisting, because they have like a wide range of profiles to look at, right? So the definition of peak changes campus to campus, but for example, like if you take CG criteria as a peak, I think one of us mentioned that it could be 7.5 for a campus versus 8.5 could be considered a peak for another. But specifically, if you were to look at McKinsey, they have certain traits that they've mentioned on their website as something that they look for in every candidate. It could be something like personal impact or entrepreneurial drive or courageous change, things like that. So while this does not necessarily mean that you'll have to be a founder or something to show entrepreneurial drive, there could be certain experiences of yours in the CV that could highlight these aspects. So being capable of driving personal impact is some certain time when you were able to show some sort of result in a short period of time. You sort of set your mind to it and you're able to achieve that. So if you're able to show these in bullet points on your CV, I think that is something that can catch the attention of the shortlisting person as well. So yeah, this was specifically for McKinsey. They do have a set of traits that they've mentioned on their website that you can go through to get an idea of how that translates to different factors that you can showcase in your CV.
Okay. Okay, so that's it with our questions. Thank you so much for answering them, and thank you so much for being here. To all the panelists, as well as the people who have participated, as well as those who are watching the live stream, thank you so much for joining us. I think we'll wrap it up now, and good night. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.